Welcome to a quick start in Space Engineers. This is how to get started on a server, and we're going to go through it in an hour to get you up and running. So we're going to pick United Space Force since they seem to be everywhere. You usually find a couple of people in there. And we're starting with a space pod start. This small little craft gives us pretty much everything we need to get mining and create a little base out of it. It's a really good start for starting on a server, because one of the most important parts is keeping your stuff hidden. So you really want to have a start that's not on any of the planets, because they tend to get raided. So the first part is to check our progression to see what we have to unlock, which in this case you can see that I don't have anything unlocked. So once we go through the list, I usually tend to start with the interior block, because that unlocks all your interior items. So that's a very quick. Then we need to make a drill. So we're going to cut apart the air vent for parts. We're going to make a small grid landing gear, quickly weld it up. And that unlocks control seats, cockpits, and the like. And then from there, if you look through this list, so scroll down to, here we go, landing gear, unlocked all those, and underneath that is the drill. So we can just hack this. You bring it down below the blue line, weld it back up, and it unlocks all the blocks. We don't have to build it from scratch. It saves us a little bit of time. So from here, we got a couple things to do. We have to make the space pod permanent. So in this case, we need lots of motors, computer chips, and tubes. So most of the motors we get from these two doors. So we're going to grind them down enough to get the motors out of them. And in order to make a merge block, we have to have made a power block. So the one thing we can make immediately is a windmill. We can make that with all the parts we find on the space pod. So we grab some interior plates from the catwalks used to cover the walls on the cockpit or bridge. And we'll also need girders, which we can get from cutting apart the windows, which we have to remove the windows anyway because we want to add a drill to that front. So we quickly take these out. That should give us our 24. For some reason, didn't quite have enough. Oh, and there's the missing one. Is it? Nope. So we gotta get some more. And that's good enough. Okay, once that's built, we can then tear it down, because we don't actually need this. Since it won't work, for obvious reasons. So now, merge block is unlocked. Drag it down to a bar. I'm not being very selective about organizing it at the moment. I'm just trying to get skills unlocked, and the first thing we got to do is grab some steel plates. We're going to weld this up, and then from there we can make another one. So for the steel tubes, you're going to have to cut apart two thrusters. Now we just want to grind it down until we can get the tubes. We'll have to repair them after. So the trick to this is you merge block your starter pod to another grid, which will reset the grid name, and the system will think it's a new object. Now, one of the ways to do that is to merge it to a station. we can make a station out of a single merge block. So what I'm doing here is adding them both to this, and then I'll use the ship itself to turn it into a station by turning the whole thing into a station, disconnecting, and when it disconnects, the merge block will stay a station. And then I can just fly up the space pod a little bit and turn the merge block back on and reconnect, and that is all we need to do. So you turn off the first merge block, you fly up a little. Technically you could just stay right next to it, you don't even have to move it. You just turn it off and then turn it back on again and click. It now thinks it's a new station. And if you look at the name, if you do this yourself, you'll know you did it right when you check the name and you see it's changed to static grid with some number. So we name it what we want. Doesn't matter what we name it, but just something that you can easily find. And now we know we can move, so now we can cut those off. And the next step is to get a drill going. Now, luckily, a lot of the parts we need for this are all attached, all part of these two merge blocks. So we're going to quickly cut those up, grab some parts, and we're going to get a lot of steel plates. Steel plates we can grab from around the ship. So we cut these off, get up here. We need a few more motors. And lots of steel plates. Now I'm cutting these off because these are all going to be replaced with our production blocks. I like to keep everything in line. And I was testing to see if I could make a light yet, but I can't. We got a couple more parts we got to make to unlock lights. But we got this. It was made of steel plates, so we're going to grind those down too. So I like to keep everything in line so that we don't have anything that gets snagged on rocks when we try to mine. At some point we'll add 5 drills to the front, and this will become a dedicated miner. You may clean it up and change the look of it later, but it's a pretty effective mining craft. Really doesn't need much. Now, this center part over here is usually where I put the ore detector, and also the solar panels go back here. Again, everything's trying to be in line and keep the same silhouette. So it's going to go on top. So when I need more, I'll go back and grab more of those steel plates. Yeah, I realized I accidentally used up the steel plates I needed. There's no extra ones there. Let's go back. And I'm grabbing missing pieces since we have more than enough motors from the 2 doors. Just taking a look at all the stuff that has to be built. And one of the things we have to do is conveyors. Now, conveyors further down, and to unlock those, we have to unlock cargo. So we grind cargo, which unlocks conveyors. And we also see the O2 gen. Oh, yeah, the O2 gen unlocks a bunch of blocks, especially for us to start making hydrogen engines. So we're gonna grind that too. So again, I'm jumping back and forth between getting the base built and unlocking progression. Now the great thing is, once we have this built, we can pretty much replace all the other blocks that have been chopped up. So from here, I'm just going to add the drill to the bar. The right click adds it. We're going to queue up as many as we can, just so it just starts processing all the stone into the ingots that we need. Pretty simple process. And from here, start collecting all the stuff that needs to start being put into production. And you can see it's starting back and forth, getting that stuff welded up. Clicking that button will start everything in production. And usually what I do is I move that to the end. So as soon as it has enough components, it'll start creating the parts that I need. And if there's not enough ingots for it, it'll go back to making ingots. And you're going to add that to the queue, even though we can't build it yet. And the next part, and the reason we took out this is to make a spot for us to add a basic assembler, which we'll need to get everything else built. I just grabbed the color from the other stuff just to kind of keep the theme going. And here we're going to add a conveyor, because I like to add a bunch of refineries. Usually I add anywhere between 2 to 4 to the ship, just to be able to process stone instead of tossing it out, just to get that much more extra material. But if you got a big mining ship, you may not need to have those little refineries. You can just toss out the stone once you really got production going. And I got the air vents now back working. Don't mind my orientation. I kind of jump around. I don't try to keep myself oriented with the top. That's one of the things you got to learn. And we are just moving stuff into production. I want to get these engines done and get all the parts I took off repaired, get the engine running, not the engine, get the assembler working. And you can see my cargo's at like 75%. Fill it back up, and back I go. So normally what I do is I'll stack everything together into groups, and then as stuff needs to get done, I'll reorganize it. So instead of leaving stuff in the order it's in, I'll move up the ingot production in between the steel plates, since it seems like it's going to keep doing steel plates instead of the motors I have up front, simply because the iron gets done first. So now it's properly doing the motors which I need. And I move up the silicone chips, computer chips, because the silicone isn't used anywhere else in the steel production. Okay. Trying to get the interior finished so that I can get an atmosphere going again. I'm going to finish cleaning up this stuff, since this is mainly going to be production up there once it's done. Okay. Air vent is finished. Grabbing more materials. Just showing the order of stuff that has to be built. And I need all those computer processors for the assembler. And we got plenty of stone, so it's just processing it. It's just taking a while. So since it's taking so much time, you might as well start doing some scouting. So one of the cool tricks is if you do /GPS and then a name, you can quickly create a GPS marker where you're at. And I decided to go with Siberia as the location name. So one of the things I do is I will name regions, and it could be anything, it doesn't matter, it just makes it easy to mark groups. So I don't know how far out into space, into the solar system I'm at, so I'm marking Earth, which usually is at, you can just mark it 50, 50, 50, XYZ, and that will give me my location. I'm only 1,000 out, it's not that far. That's probably a day's trip, a couple hours, if I want to work my way in without a jump drive, but I'll probably go for a jump drive. And one great thing right off the bat is this asteroid is covered in pretty large groups of ice. So we're going to name it Siberia, since ice. Now, normally when I'm scouting asteroids, what I usually tell other people is always try to look for 2 ores. But this is so close, I'm just doing a quick scout of it, and I'll check it later with a ore detector. Always assume there's at least 2. Although, with as much ice as there is on this, there may not be another ore. Is that ice, or is that just light coming through? And that's just light. I mean my skybox. Trying to locate that cluster of asteroids. Clusters are always good because you get lots of small rocks that'll have the same ore as the big ones. So you can figure out what the big ones have without having to fly around them. And this gives a survival kit time to process all those materials it has to make. It's just a speed thing at this point. And I can already see a marker of something up there. And it turns out to be a metal, nickel. So normally I just use the 2-letter name for each of the materials, just to make it easier. AG for silver, AU for gold, NI and SI for nickel and silicon respectively, UR for uranium, CO for cobalt, and MG for magnesium. I think I covered FE for iron. So, the main materials we're trying to find right at the beginning is iron and cobalt. We get those 2, and it lets us produce all the main stuff that we have to. And this is an interesting cave design. So I just mark it in case I want to use it as a reference point, or to use as a base of some sort. Normally I avoid bases directly on asteroids, since pirates, when they come looking for you, will tend to look for asteroids. So they will usually find you. So I normally set up about 10k to 20k from any asteroid, just an open space as far as I can get from any asteroids. And that gives me a nice safe spot to work from. Having my morning coffee, excuse me. Okay, on to the next rock. And that's the main thing you got to worry about, is raiders and hitting your bases when you're offline. And normally the way they find you is through strong signals or respawns. So strong signals always appear within 50 kilometers of your location, sometimes even going as close as 20 kilometers. And when you see those, it's time to move. So my bases are always out in open space with a jump drive, and as soon as I can move them, I immediately jump them away. And if I don't have a jump drive, I'll have at least an engine, and I'll just fly it off, get about 100k away, and start over. Once you get a jump drive, it's a lot easier. You can move your ship far away and then have your miner just jump back to a minefield and go collect resources and then jump back home. Come in here to get some oxygen and realize there's no air. And also that all the metal was in front of ingot creation. So some of the stuff just wasn't done. But that does give me a lot of iron, so at least it can produce a lot of stuff quickly. And we got the connector done with a lot of tubes from all the catwalks that were grinded down. Could take off all the catwalks for steel tubes and replace them with steel plates, armor plates. And I'm now just trying to calculate how many of those I would have to cut off to give me the extra steel plates I need, since we need over 100. And I'm being impatient. Right at the beginning, it's always a waiting game of just waiting for all this stuff to get done. And then I'm just cleaning up the last of the stuff. And I can't do the large tubes until the assembler's done. Okay, so I was just going back and forth and trying to get enough steel plates to finish that up. So while I'm waiting for that to get finished, I'm going to start laying out the rest of the parts that need to be built, namely the 2 refineries. Again, I'm trying to keep everything in line. The ship is a 3x5 front, and I'm trying to keep everything within that 3x5. Nothing sticks out, and if possible, keep everything within the 3x3, so that way when I have all 5 drills on the front, it should make a hole big enough that I can fit the entire ship into. And I had made a mistake and started adding too much material to the refineries before the assembler was done. And there we go. So now I can start making all the other pieces. Okay, just queuing up all the material that needs to be built for the refineries. I want to try to get one of the refineries working. And I'm going to sit here and micromanage the order the stuff is being built, so I stack it up. So what I'm doing there is just clearing out the survival kit to just act like a mini refinery. Let it just focus on that stuff while the assembler does all the production, all the building. Yep, we're getting kind of low on iron. Well, stone. That's why it's always good to find iron, because that's one of the big resources you need, that nickel. Nickel and iron are added to cobalt to make the steel grids, which we'll need to make cargo containers and hydrogen thrusters. So it's kind of important to get that working. One of the tricks with air is to keep both doors closed, and one of the things I use to do that is to set up a timer block. You set all your doors into a single group and then set a timer to run every 2 or 3 seconds to tell all doors to close and to start itself over again. And it's kind of a hacky way of getting a closed door script to work, since key and official servers don't allow scripts. And I found it's good enough that a lot of times I'll just use it even on script enabled servers. I'll still use it just because it works so well. So one of the ways to tell which way you were going when you're flipping around is to look at the little speed indicator, the circle with the plus. If you flip around or you look around and want to try to get reoriented, just make sure that you recenter that little plus, that will center your vector. And we find an asteroid that has nothing on it. I'm not sure still to this day if there's a distinct meaning between the light-colored asteroids and the dark ones, and then the medium ones. I always wind up mistaking the light ones for ice. It's always nice to find a comet. It gives you an infinite supply of ice. And the way the servers are set up now, as soon as you move out of render range, just about 4K, if you have no grids near an asteroid, it'll reset back to how you originally found it, and you can just go back and rewind. So if you find a really important resource, do not build on it. But again, I said before about just avoiding them. So with an asteroid like that, where there's nothing obvious on the surface, I'll just mark it as a question mark. And it means to go back there later with the ore detector and check if something's buried. And if we get the front of the ship built correctly, we'll be able to dig down into it to find our resources. Another cool cave system. A lot of time ores will pop up in the caves. Normally it's a good idea to pop out your drill as you fly through in case something's just inside the tunnel. But I see a little black spot on the top. And you get really lucky here. This looks like uranium. So once we find silver, we have a working power system. So we have ice for hydrogen production, and now uranium for ion system. So we have a choice of going in either direction, depending on if we find cobalt or platinum first. If we find platinum, then we'll just go with a lot of ion engines. If we find cobalt, we will go with hydrogen. At least in the beginning. The idea is to find them all. And I always go for the small rocks first, whenever possible, because they tend to reveal what's inside the big ones. But I'm not seeing any resources on those small ones. And some of those shadows are confusing me. I keep mistaking them for actual ores, and they turn out just to be an effect of tinted shadows. Okay. This will end up being another group that doesn't have anything, but with this much, there's got to be something here. I always aim for trying to find two, so I'm going to keep looking around. So I see streaming, which tells me something just arrived. So the first thing I do is look for unknown signal. If it says 14 minutes, it means that's the thing that just appeared. If I don't see an unknown signal, it could mean either that somebody's arrived, or right after it says streaming, a person's name may pop up, which means somebody just logged on and it's loading their area. So just keep an eye on those. And we found iron, which is great, but it's not good that the shading is completely throwing off being able to see it because of the blue. It's blending it in, and I decided to take some iron because iron's pretty important for getting stuff built. So I'll load up on iron just to have some for the trip back. Yeah, and it basically blends right into everything else. And taking another look, because again, I'm always looking for two ores. Which is not too easy to find with a hand drill. And I luck out. More nickel. So here's the second ore. So always aim for two. Not always going to find it, but more often than not you do. And sometimes you'll have some ore you really want, like platinum or uranium, alongside nickel or some other ore that you're not as interested in. Okay, so now I'm just trying to scan for rocks close to my base. And I'm not seeing too many. They're blending into the background a little too well. So we'll head off in this direction, which will put us on the other side of our starting spot. And this should have given the space pod plenty of time to process everything. I'm just making the starting spot a little more obvious. And I usually put dots on my important GPS signal just so they show up at the top, or when I get a jump drive. It makes it easy to find stuff when they're all at the very top. Usually I put my main base, and usually safe jump zones near planets, usually 30-40k out. And again, I try to aim for open space so that way if I leave a ship over there, they don't normally get found. And I have normally kept ships 20 to 30 kilometers out from the moon and have yet to have them be found, just because they're not on anything. They're just out in open space. So it's very rare for somebody to find one. And Keen servers have a lot of PvP. There's always people running around with big gun bricks blowing up stuff. Ooh, we found a new ore. And the Holy Trinity, cobalt, iron, and nickel. Those are the main ones that we need. So I'm going to dump the iron out and split it 50-50. So I'm going to fill up half my cargo with cobalt and then fill up the rest with whatever iron I can pick up. So nickel you need for batteries as well as making cobalt, which is why they're so important. And I can head back. Now, normally when I do this, I will fly out until I run out of oxygen and just see as far as I can go. But with as little production as going on, I want to keep flying back to nurse it, so I don't do those extreme ore hunting. But it's quite effective, because you fly out probably twice as far as what I'm doing, mark it all, and as soon as you start running out of resources, you just respawn back at the base and start over again. You can very quickly mark out a lot of territory, and you want to try to hit everything within about 20-25 kilometers. That should cover all the resources that you need. And at some point you will wind up with a huge cloud of GPS markers. So once you have everything marked, you can go back through your GPS thing and turn them all off, just to kind of clear up your interface. But at the beginning, when you're just trying to get everything running, and just get everything marked, it's a good idea to keep them all on. need a refinery to actually build those, because it doesn't normally do the survival kit can't make anything out of the iron or anything other than stone. That's the only thing you can process. And of course you ran out of stone. And once we get the motor done, that'll give us a refinery, which will start processing everything a lot quicker. Okay. And with the refinery done, we're going to start getting stuff produced very quick. Okay, we're going to go through and re-add everything that needs to get finished, which are our catwalks, the last few tubes we need, and that's just right-clicking with your welder. And of course we want to make a detector. And we're just going to grab one steel plate, and the reason I grab it instead of grabbing it all is that it keeps a list, and we don't want to screw that list up. So I can keep track of what needs to get built. And here comes the second one. And with both of them going, I can set one for the cobalt and one for the iron. And iron gets processed very quickly. And we are going to do the assembler, since that's the next piece to add. And once that's working, then we can get rid of the other one. We can get rid of the basic assembler and add a cargo box in that area. Okay, everything's sealed up. And then I realize I'm missing the front windows. Oops. So that'll be the next piece I have to get done. But we're getting everything returned back to normal. And just adding everything. So that'll give us a lot of iron very quick. But I can see we're completely out of everything else, so once again, we're refilling. So yeah, you definitely want to get a drill as soon as possible, just so this is a lot quicker. The old way I did it took at least 3 hours because I had to hand carry ore. And it looks like we are close to having everything done. Soon we'll have this finished. Yeah, force a habit. Okay, so it's just a matter of waiting around. I'm deciding on cargo. So I decided I'm going to add 2 more cargo containers. So it's always good to take a moment to figure out your how you're going to organize stuff. And both of those will be replaced once far enough along. Very close. I'm just waiting for computer chips to get finished. Everything's done. Got some extra tubes. We can just leave them in there. And there's a lot of chips, so we still need to add all the parts for the 2 cargo containers. So inch by inch. A lot of waiting at the beginning. Okay, so now we just need our cargo. And they're still chugging its way through them. So it shouldn't take too much longer now to get this first one done. And the great thing about the assemblers, you can set them to cooperate, which means the one that's cooperating will grab whatever is being processed from the main one and start working on it. So that'll double the speed at which stuff gets built. And that's the last piece I need to get that finished. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to move a cargo container there. I just want to make sure I have all the pieces, because once this is cut away, it can't get any more resources. Okay. That means I can pick up twice as much material now. I hope we're still missing that one last piece. There we go. And we're getting close to the 1 hour mark. Now there's some editing to remove a little bit of time here and there, but for the most part, this has been the full hour. We're going to load this up with stone to start processing. And since we haven't found silver, I can't do a cryopod, so instead I'm going to add a bed. And when we did that floor plate, that gave us the bed as unlocked, provided you have the DLC. And of course the window, since that also has to be replaced. Just checking which one is the shaded side. And at some point I'll place the light down there with the armor plate just to give it a little more structure. But the extra light never hurts. And it's filling with air. We now have atmosphere. Okay, we got a bed, so now we can sleep. And we'll end it here with taking a look at the final ship. And it's a pretty good start. We have all production, ore detection, and mining. That's all the basic stuff we will need.